Before we get started with today's podcast, we'd like to ask returning listeners to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you really enjoy it, share a link to this podcast with friends or family who would enjoy hearing our weekly discussions about basketball and basketball culture. Now, on to the show.
Jim, isn't it amazing when Michigan can keep this game to a 19-foot, 9-inch game inside that three-point line? It's all there. Nice move by Steve Fisher here. Turn it into the 19-9 game.
Welcome to the 19-9 podcast with HVS. I'm here with my co-host, Josh Barnett.
What's up?
And Dan Woods.
What it do, baby?
What's going on, guys? We're going to start tonight with something new off the top called Quick Hitters. I'm going to throw it to Josh so that he can set up this new segment.
Yeah, today's podcast, we're going to do the national championship, HVS Classic National Championship from 2003, Mello versus Kansas. But I thought before we got to that, we would hit a couple quick things that are happening in our world. And maybe this is something that we can do every time when we start the pods and kind of maybe get into some stuff that's not going to be a full podcast, but still stuff that's going on in the sports world or going on in our world, so on and so forth. So the first big news that I have for our podcast, and you guys already know this, is we have our first sponsor. How the hell did that happen?
How did that happen?
We are
Well,
officially big time.
Are we with one sponsor? I don't know. No, but our sponsor is AZIP Pizza. We share a building with them in downtown Evansville. And so I just happened to run into them, was talking to them and telling them about the pod and so on and so forth down the road a little bit. And we worked out a little sponsorship deal. So we get to talk a little bit about AZIP Pizza here from time to time. And I think I'm going to have those guys down here and we're going to do a pod whenever our schedules can line up, because we always kind of wanted to make this podcast obviously about basketball. Yes. But we also thought that it would be cool to have some entrepreneurs on here, some small businesses on here, although these guys are getting pretty big time on us. And just kind of talk about their journey, how they set their company up, and such. And we thought that would be cool if we have any entrepreneurs or small business owners that kind of listen to us. So without further ado, we have our first ever sponsor read-in by Aaron Meyer. Please don't screw it up.
AZIP Pizza is a build-your-own pizza place in Indiana and Kentucky. They have unique pizzas each month, like the Hot Little Clucker, a Nashville hot chicken pizza, and a ton of ingredients you can choose from to create something delicious on your own. Order online for curbside delivery at azippizza.com/order.
Almost screwed up that clucker again, didn't he?
I'm telling you.
Dan, you love AZIP. You had the Hot Little Clucker.
I have had the Hot Little Clucker once, but I have a specialty pizza I go with. I go chicken and bacon with banana peppers, pepper medley, sun-dried tomatoes, and I go the cheese on top.
Wow.
Man, you got it down to a science.
I have it down to a science because I think AZIP, you have to, if you're going to do AZIP, you have to play around and like find what makes sense for you. And I'm not just like a pepperoni and sausage guy from AZIP, so I went and got my own. I actually had them deliver 30 pizzas at my wedding reception at like 10. Craig Niemeyer, he's the man. He came and delivered them at my wedding. Big hit for a lot of drunk people.
Oh, I guarantee it. So when you walk in, do they know you? They're like, oh, he's about to order the Dan, or do you not have it like that yet?
I don't have it like that. I would love to have.
You definitely need to get it there where they
My
got a
name on
name.
there.
Oh my God.
One time, just give me the Big Dan. I'd order it every time I went there, even if I didn't like it.
The Big Dan. I want to be 1 month. 1 month, the Big Dan.
Forget sponsorship. The pizza of the month. That's making it.
That's way more than sponsorship. I'll pay for it.
So, anyways, we're happy to have a partnership with AZIP, and we'll keep pumping that out. They are in Indiana and Kentucky, like Myers read-in said, and good friends, and it's gonna be fun, I think. So, one down. How many more to go? Maybe
They're awesome with the community, by the way, too.
Yes, they are.
They're as good as anybody.
Yes, they are. And then my other quick hitter today was the news that the Bulls documentary, The Last Dance, is dropping early.
I'm
April
in.
18th.
How
I've got the time blocked out. I talked to my wife already about it. I'm like, you know, these days this is the NBA Finals this year. Just be prepared. 2 hours every night, or however long it is per night,
I-
where the TV's mine.
I've got a question. Can this live up to the hype? Because every sports fan this is the only thing circled. This is like Masters Sunday for golf people. Like,
it's
it is
going to
must
be
watch.
like it's gonna break all of the viewership ratings because
Yeah.
I mean it
There's
is.
nothing else. Yeah, there's nothing else on sports.
It doesn't even
related.
have to live up to the hype.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have
Michael,
to.
yeah, there's something to talk about, even if it doesn't. But I'll tell you right now that in my lifetime, Michael Jordan has not disappointed, and I can't imagine that behind the scenes footage from his final season with the Bulls is going to be disappointing somehow.
So the only question becomes, and I think I already know the answer to this because I kind of saw some of the clips that they were showing, and it was Jordan going all in on somebody at practice with like vulgar language and shit, which I loved. And because that was my one thing I was nervous about was ESPN trying to make it cookie cutter Mickey Mouse bullshit like they tend to do sometimes.
Or will it be like the first episode of, or the first airing of a season on the Brink, where they actually went like full on everything
And filmed a basketball movie inside a hockey stadium.
Really?
Don't talk to me about season on the Brink.
So here's the problem with about, what was I talking about? Gosh dang it. About the Bulls documentary. Gosh dang it. I lost my train of thought. Go to the next one.
Dynamite dropping, Dan. Really good.
That was incredible.
From the guy that is bitching about not getting paid to do this. My God.
Hey, I did have one more for you, Barnett.
Yeah.
You were going to talk about Jump Shot, the movie, a little bit. That's going to get an online premiere, correct?
Yeah, it's coming April 16th through 18th. I was actually saving that for our pod, a quick hitter for our pod.
Okay,
after
good.
this.
All right,
So
good.
We'll talk a little bit about
We'll
it.
get more about then. Okay, good. We'll get a little bit, at least the date out there a couple times.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
right, I'll drop in my knowledge now. It is like where
No, too late. We don't care.
Gosh, no, I'm going. Shows that, like Mad Men, shows that should have been on HBO, because they're like, HBO has such good shows because they can pull whatever they want, right? They can go like adult content, language, nudity, all that stuff. Like, that is where I want ESPN not to drop the ball on that. And that's where like Mad Men would be such a better show if it was on HBO.
Don't shit
Well, if
on
we want to
Mad-
do
Don't
it, yeah,
come
if
in
we
here
want
and
to do it,
shit
man.
on Mad
I know.
Men.
Get out of
No,
here.
I'm a huge Mad
What do you
Men
get?
fan. I think it's a great show, but it would have been better on HBO than it
No,
was.
No.
Breaking Bad would have been better on HBO.
I
That's what I'm
don't
saying.
know.
In that same light, though, like, I just used Mad Men as a reference.
No,
I
it was
don't
the
know.
wrong reference to make.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, it'd been so
outta
much better
here.
if all those hot chicks. Come on, get out of here! You guys are nuts.
Nah, disagree.
Yep.
Not gonna even.
100%.
Yeah.
Go ahead and just sign off.
Are you
man.
we ready? Are we ready for this? 2003 Syracuse versus Kansas. Somebody set the scene here.
Dan, go
That's-
ahead. It's your. This
got
is
it.
the game.
Yeah.
that
Why did you pick this one of
you
all the
requested
games?
and didn't show up for the pod.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys just want to keep shitting on me on this pod, I'm okay with that, as long as we just acknowledge it up front.
Hey, perfect.
All right. Why I picked this? Because I'm a junior in high school, and the one and done had been around a little bit, but Melo is really the first guy who carried a team as a one and done, and it was just it flowed into one of the greatest draft classes of all time, and those guys all had great NBA careers, and I think it goes back far enough where it touches almost every part of our audience.
I like it. That's pretty good. You know, the amazing part of that Final Four was Marquette not showing up for that Final Four game.
Yeah.
I mean, they just got destroyed in it. And I was actually talking with Marquette fan on Twitter the other day, and I can't even remember if they gave me a response or anything, because everybody, including myself, loves to bring up the D-Wade Kentucky game in the Elite Eight, the triple-double. It's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. And then you never hear anybody talk about the Final Four after that. It was just the game to get to the Final Four. And I know that was big for Marquette. Marquette has great fan base, great tradition, all that stuff. But God, I need to go back and watch that game. You know what I mean? Because they got beat by like 33 by Kansas in a Final Four game. That doesn't happen very often.
No.
Yeah. Kansas must have been just on fire on that. But I thought too, so for me, what jumped out here too, just setting the scene, was not just Melo, because I kind of remember this initially as like Melo's game, totally, because he's kind of the iconic figure from this. But man, McNamara played a much bigger role, especially in that first half, kind of establishing things for them, and just getting out there. And I think the 3-ball too, just a different weapon that, maybe before this time might not have been such a focus,
but look,
pretty rare.
Look at McNamara's threes. I think he hit 6 in the first half or 7 in the
all
first
of
half.
them. He hit 6 all in the first half.
6 in the first half, and I think 5 of them were assisted by Melo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and
they were really focusing on Melo.
Might be the only time in Melo's career he has 5 assists too, by the way.
Melo passed the shit out of the ball in this national championship game.
He really did.
Faster than I remember too. That guy he could move down the floor, young Melo.
So was I the only one that thought that Syracuse was had 8 dudes on defense for that first 12 minutes of the game? I mean,
literally one of my second thing on here. Dwayne and Warwick way more athletic than anyone else.
Yeah.
My note says
super athletic.
My note says Cuse, long as hell. 8 dudes playing out there.
How did they have that one random center, that big slow center that they had though? That
didn't matter though, because it was Craig Forth, and it didn't matter.
Just standing there.
Because he just clogged up the paint, and then they bring in McNeil off the bench, and he was more athletic and more fluid out there. But he was a big body too, and they would just bang on people. Forth was a nice piece, and you really, besides McNamara out there, who's not real long, you had Quetzwayne at the top of the 2-3. You had Forth, who was in the middle of it, so 7-footer in the middle. Melo and Hakeem Warwick on the blocks, and then McNamara was the other guy up top. I mean, where the fuck are you getting a shot off?
I don't know. It was impressive. Well, I'll tell you where they were getting a shot off is something you would have loved, Barnett. They were dumping the ball into that high post to Graves, and he and Collison were working that high-low post. I mean, that's a lost art form there. Those two guys looked in sync the entire game. Yeah. They were really working it. And you know who else I forgot about was the Langford kid. Boy, he was slippery on the drives. He could really slither to the lane. And I think I'm sure we'll talk about it a little later, but I think him getting into foul trouble, they put him on Melo initially, him getting into foul trouble, and then eventually fouling out, I think maybe cost Kansas the game, because they
and that last foul that he commits is just a spaz out moment,
bonehead, right?
I mean, you just got to let that fucker score there. I mean,
it was gonna score anyways, one way or another.
What's interesting is anytime we do any kind of Twitter trivia, or not trivia, but Twitter giveaways, or throw a question out there and just try to get some feedback from our customers and our fans. If we send anything out as far as a Kansas 03 team, or guys, we did that one pod of guys that didn't make it to the league that we thought were going to, from their college careers. All Kansas fans, I think their number one dude is Langford.
He moved like a pro. He just couldn't shoot.
Couldn't shoot at the wrong time.
And he's not big enough too. I mean, if you can't shoot, you can't be 6'3".
But I was same as you, blown away and super impressed with how slithery he was, and moving through all that length and finishing at the rim. He looked good as shit out there.
Yeah.
And then just had that bad foul, man.
Yeah.
I also think the cool part about this game is the changing of the guard. It's 4-year players. It's Roy's one of Roy's last runs, which is it's amazing.
It's his last game at Kansas, right?
Yeah. And it's amazing that he never wins a title there with everybody he had.
And had a lot of Final Fours there, too. I think this is the game where they ask him, which he had every right to say this, but they asked him after the game about North Carolina, because those rumors were already circulating.
I forgot that.
And he's the one, on live television, which never happened back then, especially from a coach not named Bob Knight, is he looked her dead in the eyes and he said, "I don't give a shit about North Carolina right now," or "Right now I don't give a shit about North Carolina."
Yeah.
And I always respected that. I kind of loved it. I've never been like a huge Roy Williams
It's
guy,
dadgummit Roy all the time. He's never cussing. He's always under control.
but
But
that
I did think
shit.
the changing of the guard there was Collison, Heinrich, long careers there, versus, we always think of Mello, and McNamara's a freshman too. So it was in the Kansas team without Wayne Simeon. It
I
was
know.
That's an underrated thing. I had that down
I
too.
think he was averaging 14 points a game, like 14.
Yeah.
and
Yeah, he's
five
All
or something
American.
stupid.
It was 15. It was 15 something.
Yeah, it was like 15 and 8 or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
and they made it to a national championship with probably, I mean, a guy that would have been a great fit against that Syracuse team because he had length and athleticism and he could play. I mean,
Yeah.
averaged 15 a game too.
Well,
But
obviously, fits right into their game plan, right? That's the way they were scoring. Is that they were
yeah,
banging?
that
They were
Kansas
banging
team,
against that zone.
that Kansas team has to be one of the great Kansas teams of all time. And if he doesn't get hurt, I mean, what could have been?
Yeah.
Even if
they're short, they're short though. That's the thing that they were struggling with all game is like, who do they bring off the bench? Like if they could bring Graves off the bench and Simeon starting, I mean, that's just a game changer because
Yeah, it's
they just did not. The guys coming off the bench were
shooting,
not. Yeah, they just had
no
nothing.
shooting.
No
You had
shooting.
Aaron Miles and you had Langford out there, and Langford can't shoot, neither can Aaron Miles, and you
No.
had them on the floor the
Heinrich
majority of the
struggled.
game together. And then Heinrich struggled big time. So
Bad.
Heinrich knocks down a couple threes like he had all season because Heinrich was a phenomenal basketball player. And that because that game gets tight late, Syracuse handles them, and then it gets tight late. But if Heinrich is his normal self, that game's probably completely different.
For sure. And I have in there we're talking about, I mean, Kansas gets down 32-14 and they hit a big three to make it 32-17 and actually make a pretty good run in the first half to not where, so it's not an absolute blowout because it had the makings to be an absolute blowout early.
What did you guys think about Kansas's free throw shooting? Have you guys been at games where a team like that, just no one on the team can hit a free throw? Because it is just weird. Even on
Yeah.
rewatching,
That's
it's
the
just
last thing I
weird
have
to
on
watch guys like totally freeze up. I mean, I don't remember what the final tally was, but they missed like 20 free throws. It was crazy how many free throws they
really
missed.
bad. Like I want to say, like, I think there was a time when they missed 9 of 11. Like, and they were like 7 of 20 something from the line. Like it obviously cost them the game.
From
Yeah.
3 Indiana boys, that shit is unfathomable. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up on Bob Knight basketball where you made more free throws than your opponent attempted.
You're right.
And I mean, you win. Like Calipari has lost national championships on free throw shooting.
Right.
Stacked
Yeah.
teams, great teams, should have ran away with national championships, but couldn't make free. It's an Achilles heel. You hear it all the time, and it's cliche as hell, but it's the damn truth. I mean, you don't
So
if
weird.
you can't shoot threes, because that Kansas team without Heinrich can't hit shit from 3.
Well, what was weird though is that they don't seem like a team that would get the yips like that. Like Dan was saying, they're a team that was a seasoned veteran team, and I don't know what their season average was, but it couldn't have been anywhere near that bad. I mean, they were just like a bit, had to be one of the worst free throw shooting performances in the history of the NCAA.
So it's weird because obviously now everything is just rewatches, right? So I think I've seen the Wisconsin Kentucky game from 15 5 times in the last couple weeks because it's always on Big Ten Network, right? So
Mhm.
I was watching the 13 Michigan versus Syracuse Final Four game, and Michigan does the same thing. Burke misses a couple. McGarry was a bad free throw shooter, and I went back and rewatched that game too because it was just on. And I think there was a stretch where Michigan was like 4 of 11 from the line at a point, and they had that game kind of in control the whole time, and they almost gave that game away on the free throw line too, which is, and I forget that, but man, they missed some big free throws and got kind of lucky at the end to win that game when they had a pretty big lead. But when Syracuse brought the pressure against them, because no one ever thinks Syracuse can bring pressure, and they folded up like a tent shooting free throws, it was really bad.
What did you guys think of did you guys remember Melo's back being hurt? Because I don't remember that. I just didn't remember that playing into the game, but they talked about it a ton during the broadcast, and I actually thought Packard was kind of questioning whether he was actually injured, and then he would call it out every time he winced or made a face. But I mean, Melo was scoreless the last 13 minutes of the game, and I again did not remember that, but it certainly was a huge part of this game.
So 2 things. Number 1, watching these old games and watching this 2003 game, I realized how much I really miss Billy Packer on the calls of these games. Big Billy Packer fan. I love him. He might be an arrogant prick in real life. I don't care. I love him at Final Four. I mean, I have no idea. Never met him, obviously. So, but I love Billy Packer for the Final Four far more than anybody that's doing anything with it these days. And maybe that's just a nostalgia thing.
See, I don't know though. In this game, like I agree with you. I do love him too, but in this game, I actually muted it at one point because I don't know why, but he was driving me crazy. He just could not get off of talking about Melo's back and the missed free throws. It was driving me nuts. One of our categories is, would this game have been better with Bill Walton? And usually in these championship games, I would say no, but I would have rather had Big Bill on this one.
That's the softest shit you've ever said on this
I'm
podcast.
serious, man.
I cannot handle people that tell me that they mute something when they're watching it because of the sports.
It was it was taken away from the game. I was enjoying the game, and he just like it was out of place. Like Melo wouldn't even be in. He wouldn't even be in the play. He just like would wince on the other side, and he'd be, "Oh my God, Melo's back. Is it hurt? I don't, just
well,
like."
This has to be one of his last broadcasts too.
Yeah. Maybe I guess maybe he's slipping a little bit.
I didn't get that at all. I didn't really pay much attention to that. I just like his voice, and
that's unquestionable. Like I said, he's one of my favorites. Just not this game for me.
So Melo. So back to Melo. Melo had a way more quiet than what I remember 2010 and 7, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So 2010 and 7, but if you remember that whole tournament, he had just been scoring at will on people,
right?
And so then he disappears and kind of doesn't score. There, like you said, the last 13 minutes of the game, which is amazing because he was just lighting people up and smiling the entire time. But like I think Dan said it earlier that he thought that this was like, or maybe it was you, Meyer, that said you remember this as the Melo run. An asterisk to that side there has to be an asterisk to the side for McNamara, who's already been recognized, but for Hakeem Warwick too.
Yeah,
because that guy was an absolute animal and turns out to be a great pro for many years. He definitely
had the play of the game. It was funny to give Packard a little credit. He kept talking about Hakeem Warwick's ballerina moves. I thought that was an interesting way to say it because he's not. I wouldn't have thought of Hakeem Warwick like that, but he does kind of move gracefully because he's so slender. Kind of, I guess that's where he gets the.
But it doesn't look like a ballerina. It's just amazing because it's all knees and elbows flying all over the place, and then somehow he makes it into a basketball move.
Right.
But he has the signature play of their Final Four game too against Texas, which Melo gets all the love on that. But I mean, he just put his nuts in that Texas player's face and just murdered one on the baseline. And I mean, those are the 2 plays of the 03 championship run, as far as the Final Four goes, and they both belong to Warwick, not Melo.
One of my notes on Melo is the D that they played on him in the second half was so much more physical than what they did in the first half to him. Like they were in his airspace in that second half. And I thought the game in general, one of my notes says a physical game. It's crazy to go back and watch games, even we talked about this when we watched the 13 game, how much more physical the game was in the early 2000s. Like you
it's
weren't
nuts
calls. Like when they talk about the hand checking and the movement, you had to get fouled like in the early 2000s to get calls. Like there was no freedom of movement, and how they just let guys bang inside was really, really different to me. And I thought this game was really physical.
I can't remember what old game I was watching the other day that was on CBS Sports Network or whatever the hell it's called. And this guy just like torpedoes himself. I think it was maybe like the 88 national championship or something, a game that I don't remember watching. I wanted to watch a little bit of it. I mean, I'm talking about just like loses the ball, so he just goes and lowers his shoulder and launches himself into like the stomach of another player, and then they call the ball out of bounds on the dude that got torpedoed or whatever. And I'm like, that fucker would be spent like having like a 1-game suspension in these days.
Oh, for sure.
But I loved it. But you're right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you don't think of 2003 as being that long ago, but 17 years ago, man.
Yeah.
That is, and another big thing about this too is Collison and Heinrich, highly underrated pros. Like they both have long careers in the NBA. Like real, and you don't think Nick Collison, like white guy who plays the 4, doesn't do anything like great, is going to be a great pro, but he ended up having a pretty good run. I think he just retired a couple years ago. So I think he had like a 13 or 14-year run where he was just a really, really steady pro. And Heinrich was on a bunch of deals. I mean, he got paid too a couple of times.
I saw that one play towards the end of the game where they throw it from half court out of bounds down to the baseline, and Heinrich takes it, sweeps it through, takes like 2 dribbles and goes up, just 2-hand murders one. I stopped the game, got on my phone and Wikipedia'd how much is Kurt Heinrich worth? Like I wanted to look at all of his contracts in the NBA because I was like,
hold up, that guy had to
what
make some money.
in the fuck just happened?
You forgot to mention too that was after he had sprained his ankle too.
Oh
like
yeah, that was a bad
moments
sprain.
before that he had badly sprained his ankle, and yet somehow is flying to the hoop just a few minutes later for a 2-handed dunk.
I mean, I literally paused it before he ever even hit the ground and looked up how much money he made in the NBA because I was like, I don't remember.
How much did he make? It was a bunch, wasn't it?
It was up there. I can't remember.
85 million.
That's a decent chunk of change.
Decent chunk. The most out of anybody in the game. I think your boy Collison made like 70 some.
Crazy.
Really?
On the Kansas side, because Melo made a lot more than that.
Well, obviously, yeah.
But Hakeem Warwick, how long was Hakeem Warwick in the NBA too? He was 12, 13-year guy too, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't look him up. Don't know.
Gotcha. Meyer, by the way.
Meyer always hates it when we look up shit.
I know. Here they go. Let's get on Google.
Kansas was the 277th ranked free throw shooting team in the country.
All right, so it did fall in there.
They had the most attempts in the country. They shot 65% from the line.
So they had to have shot like 20% in this game, though. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Really bad.
Yeah.
You know what we can do, Meyer? We can.
You're gonna look that up too. Well, while you're doing that, I'm gonna throw out the next question because I'm curious. Would these teams be good today? So if you trotted these out, 2020-21 season, now that this one's concluded, would these teams be good today?
Yes.
I
think if you put Wayne Simeon on the Kansas team, they give anybody what they want.
Really? See, I'm not sure about Kansas because
they would need more shooting. They would need more shooting for sure.
Indiana showed this year why you got to have some shooters. It's just such a struggle now.
And they don't have one pro. Get out of here with this IU love fest. IU gets beat by this Kansas team by 30.
Oh no, I'm not saying they're gonna win. I'm just saying that sort of inability to shoot is a problem. Like because some threes worth more than 2, and people just take so many more threes now today.
So Dan hears the word Indiana and just goes for everybody's throat.
I know.
Like the whole thing that Meyer just said was like putting
IU
down. Like we had no shooters this year. We couldn't shoot for shit, and that doesn't work.
Since Holes went there. Get
all
out
day,
of here.
all Dan hears is Indiana is going to beat this Kansas team. Like what? Where did I say that?
Listen, I'm not one of these. I'm not one of these fans. I never say shit when my team win. Regardless, I just don't because I don't really care all that much anymore. But let IU beat Michigan's ass one of these years, and I'm going all in.
I know, kidding.
I mean, 7 in a row, man. It's been a while,
man.
Let it happen. All it has to do is happen one time in the next 20 years.
I'm like living on borrowed time right now because they got some pretty good runs.
Yeah,
I won't say shit. I'll just smile at you every time I see you. That's always worse.
But the one thing like Melo's game from this to his NBA career was like a spitting image. Like he caught the ball on the wing, like would carry the ball down, would look down at people and just elevate and shoot. And he was just such a pure shooter. I loved it. Like I felt like I was watching Melo 10 years later in the NBA. I thought his game was almost identical to what it was when he was at Syracuse. And a lot of guys don't have the exact same game. Like he didn't really transition. He was kind of almost identical to what he was then.
More polished. Like the only thing that I did notice, his handle was not very tight. He had to dribble quite a bit, and he had tightened up his handle a lot in the pros because he got away with some pretty loose things where I think Kansas's defense maybe wasn't who they had on him wasn't so stellar. They didn't have a good matchup for him.
Nobody in the country had a good matchup for Melo that year.
Probably true.
I love Melo too because people like George Karl says he coached him wrong. I heard Danny Granger one time do an interview where he was talking about like who's the hardest guy to guard, and he's like Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah,
he's like because he looks like he's like out of shape, but he's so strong, he's so athletic, he's so physical. He's like he is a nightmare matchup for anybody, just because of like how big physically he is. And he was never scared to shoot. He is the definition of what this podcast is. He is a high volume shooter.
But he can give it to you in any way. He can post you, he can get to the rim, he can pull up over you, he's got the mid-range game, and he can hit the three. So like until KD came around and KD kind of refined himself, Melo hands down was the best scorer in the league for a good 7-8 year stretch.
Yeah, it went Kobe, Melo, KD in that straight order. Like that was how the torch went.
Right. And Melo was just a problem. The thing that I marvel at with Melo and LeBron from when they came into the league, and I know they were both like 18, 19, whatever, super young, but those guys got so much stronger from when they, you see them on those draft clips or whatever. And even Melo, who's not like ripped up like LeBron's just an animal, but even Melo, you can tell that. I mean, that dude added so much strength from where he was at Syracuse, and
he never looked fat either. Always like looked like he was like thick, but never like crazy out of shape.
He was somewhere between LeBron and Paul Pierce.
That's a really good mix right there.
LaPierce, huh?
Dan loves
we haven't said anything about Queth Duaney because he kind of comes out of nowhere in this game. They have that stat early in the game, like Syracuse was like 22-1 when Queth Duaney's in.
I thought he kept in the game early. He was dominant.
Yeah.
Like, hey Barnett, did you watch Duaney play when they played at Wrights?
Yes, I did.
Were you playing?
No, that was much younger. So I played against Queth AAU. So Queth was like a year older than me. So 2003, he was a senior, and that was my junior year at IU. But we always had to play up in our AAU thing, and he played on Bloomington Red. They were the #1 ranked AAU program in the country at the time we played them. We played them in the state thing, getting to the nationals or whatever, however the hell it went, and they beat us pretty good. They beat us by maybe, I don't know, 14, 16 or something. But we were all a year younger, but it was like a hell of a lot of fun. Oh, I got in a fight with the old Butler coach in that game.
Who?
So like I'm goddamn, what's his name? Brandon Miller, maybe? You know, the dude that like kind of went like MIA from Butler before they hired
before Holtman.
Yeah, before they hired Holtman. So that guy was a really good high school player. And we got tangled up. So like I said, we were like the young dudes. So I wanted to kind of send a message that we weren't like intimidated by them because they were older than us and they were #1 ranked team. And I wasn't like a dirty player or strong or anything. I mean, I was a little bitch, but we got locked up underneath the basket on a shot. And that dude punched me. That old Butler coach, like turn around with I had one of his arms locked up. He just threw a haymaker, just punched me.
So are you really telling me that Brandon Miller's downfall was why he left Butler's because he could never get over that you whipped his ass in a fight?
No, I didn't whip him. He punched me, and then the ref. This is the favoritism they got because they were #1 team in the country. We were nobodies. The ref said that if I did one other thing in that game, even as much as an illegal screen, he was throwing my ass out of the game.
Oh my god!
Intimidation.
And I'm like, wow. I looked at that dude and I was like, "Sir, that man punched me. I did not." I didn't even do anything. So yeah, that's my Bloomington Red story. But Queth was on that team, and he was always good. But I remember Dwayne coming to Wrights. That was a big deal.
Was
And I
that what?
I almost played against Queth Duaney, but just missed it because we lost in the game before when
That's
they
right.
won the state championship.
Bloomington North, Queth
Yeah,
Duaney,
North.
state
So
champs.
they were one away from matching up against them, but
Where did Dwayne play? Was it
Wisconsin.
Broderville?
yeah,
No, was it what high school did he play?
It would have been. It probably was Bloomington North too.
I'm sure. I think all those kids went
Really?
to North
Because there was
yeah.
Bill too, and then the guy that runs our social media ads for us. His best friends. He's best friends with Queth. He was.
They had
that was his
five. They
best
had
man at the wedding.
five kids. They all went to D1 on athletic scholarships.
Yeah,
With
now
Dwayne.
they're all like helping save the world and shit. Like great
Yeah.
family.
I mean, Dwayne, Quet Dwayne, and Bill.
Yep. They got a daughter that one played as well.
BIL too. But I think
Yep.
Bill was probably the least heralded of the whole group. And
Probably.
he went through Bloomington North somewhere around that time that like Jeffries and those dudes did
Yeah,
too.
because he used to play up with Hyper all the time too.
Right. Interesting.
So who gets the game ball for this game? I think it might be obvious, but I'm kind of curious if you guys want to zag on this one.
I don't think it's obvious at all. Are you thinking it's obvious because it's Mello?
That's who because I tried to think of somebody else. I almost went with Akeem Warwick, like you said, but then I went back to it. You said the stat line already: 20, 10, 7 assists, only 3 turnovers. And again, I think that the biggest thing that doesn't show up in the box score is that he put Langford out. He gets him in foul trouble early, and then that causes him to foul out later in the game, and ultimately that might have been the deciding.
It probably
factor.
has to go to Mello because so much facilitated off of him. You know what I mean? So much shit happened and people were able to move around freely because of what happened to him or because of the attention being paid to him. But there were other dudes that were having great games out there too.
The role players started. I mean, talking about McNamara's 6 threes in the first half. Dwayne gets double figures early. Like Warwick, those guys all had to play well because, I mean, Melo obviously goes off, but those guys, if they don't have great years like they did, Syracuse never wins. Even though Melo was as good as he was, he had a bunch of star role players on his team.
For sure. I mean, McNamara was a bona fide star in the Big East from that time.
That run he goes on in the Big East
Right.
tournament. When
That's what I'm saying.
didn't he stand up on the scores table after he goes crazy?
I think you're thinking of Devendorf.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Eric Devendorf. Yeah,
that's a great name right there.
You always get the white guys confused.
White guys who have fades, that good stuff.
They play for Syracuse. They go on Big East runs. They all blend together.
They do.
Q's has had some crazy runs. Everybody's had those crazy runs in the Big East. It seems like that's what kind of makes it so cool.
Yeah, this game was awesome because it put that tournament put guys on the map for the draft, which happened to be headlined by LeBron. But D-Wade goes on the run. We talked about Melo going on the run. Bosh.
Darko went on a run over there in Europe.
Yeah, what a great pick.
Oh man.
No, it's a great draft pick in the one but that's the cool part about the one and done now. You at least get to see those guys for at least what you're guaranteed at least 1 year of them. And that's pretty cool.
I agree with that.
Selfishly, I root for.
We'll enjoy it because it's about to be done. So there's gonna be gone here in a year or so.
Meyer, in case you haven't been paying attention, sports have been canceled forever. So,
well, I'm just saying we lost the tournament with these guys. That stinks.
Yeah, no, it does suck, doesn't it?
Yeah. What else you guys got? You guys got anything else for this one?
Hard no. I'm all out of ideas on this one.
2 top coaches. It was awesome.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Boeheim getting his national.
Yeah, that's his first one, right?
His first and only, but he's been there. He was there in '87, and then he was there in '96 too in the national championship game. So he runs up against that great '96 Kentucky team that goes down as one of the greatest of all time.
Team.
And then he gets beat by Coach Knight and Keith Smart. He's a couple Derek Coleman free throws away from sealing the one in '87 too.
The 96 Kentucky team got me in a little Twitter debate the other night.
I did see
man.
that too.
I was right, though.
Well, yeah, naturally you're always right.
Yeah, I've
Dan,
never been wrong
we
before.
can't see your Twitter feed. What's the debate?
Guys said that the 2012 Kentucky team was one of the great teams of all time. And I
Yeah,
said they're not even Cal's best team, and somebody said the 96 team. So then the dude from KSR, Matt Jones,
yeah.
came out and said that he thought 96 was the best, 15, and then he had 12 as the third best Kentucky team. And I don't think the 12 Kentucky team even fits in the. I said top 5, not even the top 10 great times. I don't think the 12 Kentucky teams in the top 20 great teams of all time.
Oh, I don't know, man. That was a good team. I'd have to
But
look.
not really.
But not-
They have
what?
one good pro.
Hold on. We're not judging. If we're judging college teams by their pros,
You
I
have
don't
to in
think
the
that's
one and done era, though.
I don't know. I don't think that's a fair way to judge them. They have to.
But-
It's got to be the way they dominated their season, not the way that the guys play in the pros. Because
They
some
weren't
guys
even the Meyer. They're not the third
Alford,
best team
are you
ever
gonna
at
say
Kentucky.
are you going to say that Steve Alford, that team wasn't good because Alford didn't have a good pro career? Like I
But
don't
you
know.
bite your
Different world.
tongue. You bite
I
your
know
goddamn
exactly.
tongue.
I wanted Barnett in on this.
But I think in that one and done era like that, you almost have to value it on that, though.
I don't know. I don't see how it's
All right.
relevant.
Here's how we're going to wrap this up, and here's
Yeah.
something to think about, because this conversation you guys are having, I think, could lead to an interesting podcast down the road. But I was thinking about this today coming in here for this pod, is and with all the replays that are being shown that we're able to catch up on now, which has been kind of cool, even though we're missing obviously the tournament. I think that we should go back, and I think maybe do it by decade, or maybe start in 79, which is my benchmark for when college basketball starts. Start in 79 and go through and pick out if the national champion would be different if the national championship game was a 7-game series.
I love it. I'm all in.
So I think
do
it could be. I think that could lead to some interesting back and forth, and we won't have to cover every single national champion from 1979 on. But if you go back and you look through it and you look through the matchups and stuff, I think it can lead you down a huge rabbit hole, because you're going to have the best teams getting upset before they make the national championship game too, and that can take you in a whole nother direction.
By the way, they answered that Kentucky team is they're winning the national championship that
The
year.
15 team, I agree.
Oh
with you
yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no question, in my mind, anyways. So
Well, hey, this was
All
a
right,
good
guys.
one. I'm glad we got to do this game too.
Good one, Dan. Good pick.
it was decent, Dan.
You guys are still assholes for giving
No
me shit.
no
for this one.
credit. I'm giving you credit. You got to get over on Barnett right now.
No,
I appreciate
I
you guys.
honestly, I really enjoyed rewatching that game. I thought it was like an entertaining, fun game to sit and watch, and I wasn't even distracted by my phone watching it like I am most things.
And Meyer hates Billy Packers. The one thing I take.
I was
from
all
it.
in. Myers soft for muting a broadcaster, letting a
Muted.
broadcaster get so far
Muted
into his head that he has to mute.
You
Bye.
watch it one more time and see how many times he talks about Melo's back. Oh, Melo's back. Melo's back. Melo's
I can
back.
watch
Melo's
any game
Oh,
38
God,
consecutive
go.
times and never mute anything, because
It's what
not
makes.
that
It's why
big of
people
a
go
deal.
after Dockich all the time, and it makes me just.
It used to be
cringe, like,
Dig Vitale. I
Yeah.
remember that. Used to be
Can't
the
stand
big thing.
Dockich.
I love Dockich. Get him on any call.
Not
I love
on.
him.
I mean, I like him as far as like just his takes and stuff like that, but not. And I guess mostly because I watch him during IU games, and he's always got to throw it.
I think
That's
he's the
not
best
IU.
play-by. I think he's the best Keller guy in the country right now.
If he's not doing an IU game, he's all right.
I think
But
he's
not-
good there too. I just think he's honest, and people. hate
Nah,
it.
man. I think he just is. He's too much of a like. He tries to be anti-IU because he doesn't want to seem like he's pro-IU because people know him from there.
Wrapping up this podcast, we'll do
Yeah,
another
let's go.
one on best, worst commentators.
We're getting Dockich now. It's done.
Good luck. Dan used to be a regular on a show.
We'll
Yeah.
call in. We'll
All
get in there.
All right, guys.
All right.